Hey besties. Merry holidays. I sadly have to say that I'm sick. I feel like death warmed over. I also feel the same way Pep Guardiola does watching his empire crumble.
They ask you how you are and you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine.
It's the end of December. Wrestle Kingdom 19 is just around the corner. And because I think all of you are on the nice list, I have decided to release the Snyder Cut, also known as my Jay White video. When I inquired about whether or not I should re-upload videos to this channel, a good few of you asked about the Jay White video, and I wasn't sure at first because it is of its time. But you know what? Why the hell not? This video is the reason why me and New Japan Pro Wrestling are mortal enemies, because not only did they try to copyright claim my beautifully average face, they also tried to copyright claim William Shakespeare. Yeah, that guy. Imagine a Japanese pro wrestling company trying to claim ownership of this white dude who very likely may not have even existed. That is a deep cut for you drama nerds. But on the plus side of that drama, this video ended up being one of the best / most creative videos I've ever created? Question mark? Do I know what Jay White's been up to since joining AEW? Nope. But I still hold his wild and over-the-top journey in New Japan very near and dear to my heart because that dude is so dramatic. Drama. So with that, enjoy this blast from the past video that was in honor of Wrestle Kingdom 17 back in 2023. And if you're somebody who doesn't really know Jay White's career outside of AEW, I hope you enjoy this video as well if it's your first time watching it. Oh boy, it's a doozy. Catch you on the flip side. Merry Chrysler, everybody! And don't forget to be excellent to each other. What's up, everybody? My name is Karen and I watch wrestling. I bet you all missed that intro. I just want to give a tremendous thank you to all of you for being so supportive while I recover from a spinal fusion. As you can see, I can't film myself in front of a camera yet, but I can do a voiceover. And with Wrestle Kingdom 17 coming up, I have been very eager to cover one of the matches. On January 4th, Kazuchika Okada, the golden child of New Japan Pro Wrestling, will be challenging backstabber and overall menace Jay White for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. This is going to be their 6th encounter in a singles match setting, which had me wondering about the long-term story that seems to be at play here. When it comes to a feud like this, nothing is coincidental, so I wanted to take a look at why Jay White and Kazuchika Okada keep crossing paths.
Why are you so obsessed with me?
Our tale begins in late 2017, where Ace of the Universe and air guitar extraordinaire Hiroshi Tanahashi has just successfully defended the IWGP Intercontinental Championship, RIP, against Kota Ibushi. Scene: Osaka Prefectural Gym. The lights go out and a video plays. A figure is seen in a room full of TVs showing static while pages from books line the walls. There's a knife. There's a book. There's a knife digging into the book. The figure is revealed and it's Jay White? The end of the video announces that Switchblade is coming, which apparently meant right now because all of a sudden Jay's music hits and out he comes, walking towards the ring. How to describe Switchblade Jay White? He's a He's an absolute dick. As a young lion, Jay was this bright, blue-eyed kid from New Zealand, eager to make a name for himself. He was very respectful and hardworking, and dare I say, he showed signs of being quite the babyface, even throughout his excursion. But now, Goth Light was tired of playing by the rules and not seeing results. He wanted to do things his way to carve his own path. Jay White was ready to rule New Japan Pro Wrestling, but first, he had to get through the man synonymous with what the company is today, Hiroshi Tanahashi. After entering the ring, Jay challenges the handsome dimple-faced Ace for his title title at Wrestle Kingdom 12 on January 4th. So this dude walked back into the company after excursion and booked himself into the biggest wrestling event in Japan for his first match back. Girl boss? No, that's Switch Boss, hunty. Unfortunately, the Switchblade's plans to take over New Japan immediately hit a snag, with him losing to Tanahashi, aka the best hair in the biz. But if we only knew then what we know now, what was to come in 2018?
I will own and run this company.
In New Japan, the day following Wrestle Kingdom is a show called New Year Dash, which sets the tone for the upcoming year. It was January 5th, 2018, and Kenny Omega was still around as leader of Bullet Club. Things were getting spicy between him and the other BC girlies, with fights constantly breaking out, and Kenny was sick and tired of it. So the logical solution was to rope in a new member. Enter Jay White. Kenny invited Jay to join Bullet Club and even brought a housewarming gift, how sweet, which Jay gladly accepted. But the cleaner was gagged when Jay hit him with a Blade Runner and then threw the shirt back at the ring like the piece of fast fashion it was. XOXO. Okay, yeah, we already covered Jay's Bullet Club roots in another video. So why is Jay obsessed with Kazuchika Okada? Oh, I'm so glad you asked. Let me get to that. The day after New Year Dash, a press conference was held where Kazuchika Okada, the IWGP Heavyweight Champion, RIP, introduced a new member for his faction Chaos. And you'll never guess who it was.
It's me!
This choice was a surprise to a lot of fans given Jay's new attitude. I looked up reactions on Twitter from English-speaking fans, and a majority of them were really bummed out. So Jay's now in Chaos, and he has his sights set on Kenny Omega, who's the IWGP United States Champion at this time, and part of Jay's motivation was claiming that he hated Bullet Club. Quite an interesting statement to make when the founder of the group deemed you the heir apparent. But Jay is also the type of person who's very open and upfront about his motives, and he made it known right off the bat that joining Chaos was meant to benefit him to get what he wants. And he let Okada know at that press conference that their paths will one day cross, and Jay was gonna take that heavyweight title away from the Rainmaker. So for the beginning of 2018, Jay was in a feud with Kenny Omega, while Okada was in a feud with Sonata, that handsome, stone-cold man who cared more about Cup Noodle than his tag team partner betraying him. Jay defeats Kenny to win the United States title, while Okada defeats Sonata to successfully defend the heavyweight title. Each man successfully defends their titles a few more times. I'm just fast forwarding here. And then, after his 12th title defense at Wrestling Dontaku, Okada calls out Kenny Omega to be his next challenger, with the match taking place in June at Dominion. And this is New Japan's big middle of the year show. The two men had previously faced each other 3 times prior to this point, with 1 win each, along with a time limit draw. This match series is huge among New Japan fans, and Meltzer just to quickly gloss over it. What's important here is that Okada ended up losing the match and his title. And he broke. Kazuchika Okada was synonymous with the IWGP Heavyweight title. He had held it for 720 days before losing it to Omega, and he was on his 4th title reign. And as if things weren't bad enough for the Chaos Boys, Jay also lost his title to Juice Robinson a month later. This sets us up for G1 Climax 28, where Jay and Okada were both in the A block, and their match was on night 1 of the tournament. G1 Climax 28 also gave us the antics of the Balloon Maker. Birthed a few weeks after Dominion at a UK show, Okada had dyed his hair red, got a new remix of his entrance music, had a different costume and demeanor, and yes, carried balloons. Imagine this being your first introduction to Kazuchika Okada, because it absolutely was for me. So it's night 1 of G1 Climax 28, and Jay and Okada are in the main event. But would you believe that sneaky scoundrel Jay White hits Okada with the chair in order to win the match? Shocked.
shocked.
Foreshadowing, I think it's thou. Jay White had stayed true to his words of by any means necessary, and the fans in Japan were pissed about it. And Jay exacerbated the boos by telling the audience that he didn't care what they thought. While Jay did exactly what he told us he would do, there was this sense that something more was happening beneath the surface. For a while, Jay had kept saying, "my chaos," and even repeated it after this match. And while it's easy to assume he was referring to the faction, Jay was literally talking about chaos. He was creating chaos. This match was personal for Jay, because Okada told him in January that he was nowhere near the Rainmaker's level yet. But Okada hadn't been the same after losing at Dominion, making this the perfect moment to strike for somebody with a motive. So Jay's on a mission to get the IWGP Heavyweight title, which means winning the G1 by any means necessary. But you'll never believe who dashed his hopes and dreams. It's also worth mentioning that Okada almost managed to make the final himself, finishing the block at 13 points over Jay's 12. And that's on Petty. Naturally, Jay was unhappy about not winning G1, and naturally Okada was unhappy about getting a chair to the back. So the big question was, can they coexist? But this would be where everything changed forever. The main show of September was Destruction in Kobe, where the main event featured the winner of G1 Climax, our dreamy dimple-faced ace Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Kazuchika Okada. Okada was challenging Tanahashi for his G1 prize, a contract stuffed into a briefcase that symbolized being the #1 contender to the IWGP Heavyweight Championship, to be cashed in at Wrestle Kingdom. But Tanahashi had successfully defended the briefcase when who should slither out to the ring? Jay hit Tanahashi with a Blade Runner, yet again. And the crowd was about 2 steps away from turning into Philly sports fans, if you know, you know. And as if Jay wasn't enough of a jerk, he started attacking Okada, who had been helplessly laying on the mat. Chaos member Yoshihashi tried to come to the rescue, but that didn't go to plan, aka he got injured along the way. But oh, somebody else is coming to the rescue. Who could it be? It's Okada's right-hand man and manager, Geto! Okada actually announced during the G1 final that Geto would no longer be his manager, but they were still faction members and besties, obviously. But if you've already seen my Bullet Club video, you already know what happens next. The man that Okada brought into his faction, and the man who had been by Okada's side since day one, had betrayed him. And whatever downward spiral that Okada had been on was now immediately over because that man was pissed. So this was now personal for Okada, while Jay was now completely unleashed. The betrayal he had been warning Okada about for almost a year had finally come true. That boy had been plotting the entire time. If you've been following me for a while, you've likely heard me talk about Jay White being on a Shakespearean level. This right here was his Richard III era. Richard III wants to be king, will do whatever it takes to become king, kills anyone who gets in his way, persuades a faction to support his cause. King dies, Richard becomes king, kills anyone who tries to oppose him, to be continued. Jay White wants to become IWGP Heavyweight Champion, will do whatever it takes to win it, destroys anyone who gets in his way, persuades a faction to support his cause. Spoiler alert, slays the Heavyweight Champion to become the new one. Just like Richard III, Jay was determined to prove a villain, and his new plan was to challenge Tanahashi for the briefcase to get to the main event of Wrestle Kingdom. Yet another way to insult Okada. The match took place in October at King of Pro Wrestling, and Jay was unsuccessful. However, this was the show where Jay and Geto joined Bullet Club. With Jay's chances for heavyweight glory ruined for now, Okada was ready to pounce, setting them up for a match at Wrestle Kingdom 13. But the journey to get there was wild, with Jay playing mind games with Okada by claiming there was a mole inside Chaos, which never panned out to anything and still pisses me off to this day. My money was on Yano. While our boy Kazu played the petty card all the way to the Tokyo Dome to remind Jay that, of course, he's better duh. Which now leads us to Wrestle Kingdom 13. By this point, visions of the Balloon Maker were long gone, with the old Rainmaker theme and costume making a grand return, including the Short Boys. While Okada seemed to be back in rare Rainmaker form, even controlling most of the match, he was perhaps a bit too confident after nailing his signature finisher, a clothesline aptly named Rainmaker. As Okada set up a second Rainmaker to seal Jay's fate, Jay immediately blocked and countered the move into his own finisher, Blade Runner. He got the win, and Okada's triumphant return crashed and burned in front of a shocked crowd. Backstage, Jay not so subtly mentioned what his next target was, letting the reporters know that he had an interest in the main event. Hiroshi Tanahashi challenging Kenny Omega for the IWGP Heavyweight title. Because, as Jay reminded everyone, he beat both men in 2018. This was Jay's opportunity to have his King Richard moment and finally become IWGP Heavyweight Champion to once and for all prove that he's better than Okada. Jay officially laid down the challenge at New Year Dash, and the match was set for New Beginning in Osaka the next month. Wait, Osaka, you say? The same city where Jay had his last Young Lion match? And the same city and venue where Jay made his return from Excursion and confronted Tanahashi? Surprise, surprise! Jay defeated Tanahashi and actually did the same thing he did to Okada, stopping Tanahashi's signature finisher and countering it into Blade Runner. For all of the cheating and antics Jay had done since joining Bullet Club, he cleanly pinned two of the biggest names in New Japan just over a month apart. So Jay's finally the IWGP Heavyweight Champion, and he is insufferable. But unfortunately for Jay White, things aren't gonna end well for him, just like they didn't for Richard III. Are you ready for a theater lesson? No? Too bad. In Shakespeare's historical play, Richard III turns out to be a tyrannical king attacking anyone who tries to oppose him. There is also this huge civil war that's been going on for ages, where two sides claim that the English throne belonged to them, so there's this war where Henry of Tudor rides in and kills Richard to take the throne, and then he becomes king. So, of course, the important question here is, who's Henry of Tudor in this scenario? Every March, a single elimination tournament called New Japan Cup takes place, where the winner earns a shot at the IWGP Heavyweight Championship, or now the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. So what a perfect opportunity for Okada to get back into the title scene. But more importantly, get back to Jay. As the Henry of Tudor in this story, Okada did not think that Jay deserved that title. Okada managed to reach the final, and by golly, he did the damn thing and won, now putting him in position to challenge the tyrannical champ. Their third meeting would actually take place in the US, with New Japan and Ring of Honor producing a joint show at Madison Square Garden. Oh hey, I was there. G1 Supercard took place in April 2019 with Okada and Jay as the main event. And if I've planted the seeds correctly, it should be obvious who won. At last, the tyrannical king was slain, with the true king taking the throne. Okada was once again IWGP Heavyweight Champion for the 5th time in his career. Long live the king! While this was the end of an era, it was only a matter of time before Jay wormed his way back. And Okada knew that. But that's a tale for part 2, because this is a long story, and we've got to draw this out like the Switchblade does, my dudes. What's up, everybody? My name is Karen, and I am telling this damn Jay White story even if I have to use stick figures. The downside to being the main character in your own story is that you don't or can't see when things might be your fault. especially if you keep failing. Jay White is the villain in his own story and refuses to see it, or perhaps he sees it but refuses to accept it. Because a villain never sees himself as the villain. What they're doing is just and for the greater good. It's one of the things I love about great villain characters and what William Shakespeare loved to explore, because people be complex. In the video that can no longer see the light of day, RIP, I was exploring how Jay White was a classical Shakespeare villain in his pursuit to usurp the top wrestler in New Japan, Kazuchika Okada. Jay's arc can be summarized as him wanting to prove he was the best in New Japan by any means necessary because playing nice wasn't working. So when Okada invited Jay to Chaos, he told the Rainmaker he was coming after him and his IWGP Heavyweight title because Jay White was gonna be the new ruler of New Japan. But Okada didn't believe him and said that Jay wasn't anywhere near his level yet, and then refused to hug him, and Jay took that personally. So he betrayed Okada and became the leader of Bullet Club. To me, Jay's career has 3 distinct acts so far, and they go something like this. After Jay lost to Tanahashi at Wrestle Kingdom 12, he realized he needed a plan to get what he wanted, which was to be the top guy in New Japan and make it his kingdom. Okada became the next target, which is why the offer to join Chaos was so convenient, but Okada insulted Jay, which he's held onto ever since, making his plan now personal and leading to his betrayal. But no matter what, Jay's plans are always methodical and he's always steps ahead of his opponents. However, when he's so into his plans, he can't see the forest for the trees, which is why he was able to win the IWGP Heavyweight title from Tanahashi, but he lost it to Okada 2 months later. And this is a pattern that becomes all too familiar to Jay. Hell-bent on getting the heavyweight title back, Jay managed to reach the final of G1 Climax in 2019, but he lost to the man known as God, Kota Ibushi. And then Jay did something that's become very common in his career. Instead of accepting his failures, Jay takes his anger out on others. He blames others for his shortcomings, or he'll take something from somebody in order to make himself feel better. So Jay took his anger out on Tetsuya Naito and took his Intercontinental Championship in the process. However, this opened up an opportunity to get the heavyweight title again, thank you Naito, in a crazy storyline for Wrestle Kingdom 14 called Double Gold Dash. 4 men vied to become the first double champion in New Japan. Jay lost his match and title to Naito, so he took his anger out on Ibushi, and then he started to crack. And then the pandemic happened, which gave Jay time to plot. He tried to get back to the title again at G1 Climax 30, but failed to make the final, losing to Tomohiro Ishii. But somehow, this was all Ibushi's fault. After all, Ibushi won the tournament for the 2nd year in a row, and Jay lost to Ibushi the year before. Duh! And as Jay cracked more and more and became so fixated on achieving his goal, he properly cheated in order to take Ibushi's G1 briefcase away from him. It was Jay's time, and it was finally going to happen at Wrestle Kingdom 15. But Ibushi got in the way again. Instead of Jay becoming champion, it was Ibushi. Jay's entire plan, everything that he'd been working for, had just fallen apart. So he fell apart. He couldn't understand why this happened, so he was gonna quit. But when you're stubborn and trying to prove yourself, quitting doesn't last very long. If Jay couldn't be the top champion, now the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship, then he was going to do something greater, something that Okada has never even done. One of Jay's favorite punching bags is beloved ace Hiroshi Tanahashi, and Tana was the never openweight champion, so if Jay won that title, he would become the first Grand Slam champion in New Japan history. And he did just that. But nobody cared. Jay noticed that nobody ever cared when he achieved something, which is a theme that has been running throughout his life. Every time he achieves this huge accolades, nobody cares. Nobody gives him the recognition that he feels he deserves. So nobody was taking Jay seriously as being the best, which is why he kept cracking and kept getting angrier. So Jay left Japan for a year, but he was still determined to prove everybody wrong. In that year, he plotted Bullet Club's resurgence to power, as well as his opportunity to fully exact revenge on Okada, who was IWGP Heavyweight Champion, by taking the title away from Okada, just like he promised in 2018. Because that's the action that would hurt most. That's the middle finger to Okada for saying Jay wasn't good enough to be at his level. It was the moment Jay had been waiting for almost 5 years. But Okada knows Jay very well. Like, Okada has said that he actually sees himself in Jay, so he recognized that ambition. And they did this dance 5 times already, so Okada was determined to finally end Jay's reign of terror, which is what led to Wrestle Kingdom 17. For me, the beauty of Jay and Okada's match at Wrestle Kingdom 17 was that it was 5 years of a messy relationship laid out in the ring. It was 5 years of pain, anger, revenge, and deceit, all laid out. The way I see it, Jay was like a son to Okada, a son who betrayed his father to take away what was his. This match was a must-win for Jay to prove he really was better than Okada. His 4-1 record certainly wasn't enough, especially when Jay's singles wins at Wrestle Kingdom were 2-3. But again, because Jay is so methodical with his plans and can't see the forest for the trees, he panics when things don't go his way. Jay actually gets desperate when his opponent figures him out. And he made the same mistake Okada did at Wrestle Kingdom 13. He got too confident, and that's when everything fell apart. Okada was able to prove physical dominance along with why he's always the best. He's also been trying to teach his son a lesson since Jay betrayed him in 2018. So Jay resorted to emotional attacks, even mockingly using Rainmaker and doing Okada's pose, but it wasn't enough and he could sense the match slipping away. And then Okada used Jay's finisher, Blade Runner, as the final nail in his coffin. Jay lost, and the consequences of everything he had done the last 5 years came crashing down on him. At the heart of this story is a good kid who was so ambitious that he did what he felt he needed to do to be recognized. But it cost him so much. Jay White isn't an evil, villainous person, and he shows us that through his vulnerability, because people are complex. It's just that Jay is so damn stubborn that he can't see that what he's seeking has always been inside of him. He is good enough. He's just going about things the wrong way. At the end of the match, Jay couldn't bear to give the title over, clinging to it one last time before he couldn't hold on any longer. And then, just like a child who knew that he had disobeyed, Jay dragged his body over to Okada and grabbed his leg, seeking forgiveness. And then we learned the truth backstage. Jay said he was done fighting Okada because he failed yet again. If he couldn't do it at Wrestle Kingdom 17, then he wasn't going to be able to do it anywhere else. And he was sorry. Jay doesn't regret his actions because they did get him to where he is now. But he doesn't know if they were worth it because he hurt Okada, who had been kind to him and looked after him since he was a young lion. Jay was this young kid from a different country who didn't know what was going on, and Okada was essentially a father figure to him. That's why Okada wanted Jay in chaos. That's why he recognized himself in Jay. But Jay hurt him and betrayed him. It's all very Shakespearean. If I had to compare Jay White to a Shakespearean villain, it would be Edmund from King Lear who was hell-bent on punishing his father. So Edmund was the illegitimate son of the Earl of Gloucester, and he was always reminded of his status by his father. But Edmund wanted to be respected and valued like a legitimate child, and he wanted a claim to his father's inheritance. The Earl, though he loved his son, denied Edmund legitimacy, so he set out to punish his father by becoming manipulative, duplicitous, and calculating so he could seize what he felt belonged to him, and in the process, caused the demise of the Earl. But by the end of the play, after being mortally wounded, Edmund realized the damage he had inflicted on his father and everyone around him, and ended up regretting his actions. His pain and drive for vengeance caused so much damage, and he tried to fix everything, but it was too late. Thankfully, Jay hasn't been mortally wounded yet. I mean, he is a knife boy, so. But it may be too late for him like it was for Edmund. You would think that Jay's revelation of humanity would finally bring him clarity, but he is so driven to prove himself that he's deep in denial when things go wrong. Somewhere inside of him, he has to know the truth, but he keeps blaming others. And this time, he's blaming Hikuleo, who betrayed his family to stay with Jay in Bullet Club, but then turned on Jay to go back to his family, and this happened months ago. The boy knows how to hold a grudge because he's that in denial. Jay White keeps having to learn the same lesson, and just when you think he's learned, he clings tighter to his convictions. Seriously, Jay, become the babyface we know you're meant to be. When the truth is painful, people do everything they can to deny it. They blame everybody but themselves. They make excuses because accepting the truth is scary. It fucking hurts, especially when it means you're at fault. And in Jay's case, admitting his failures would mean that he's not as good as he says he is, because his driving force is proving that he is good enough. But if he can't get the job done, that actually means that he's not. Even though in reality, it doesn't mean that at all. But Jay has yet to understand that. And that is why he's so scared to accept when he fails. This is why Shakespeare was so fascinated by villains. He wanted to explore why a person did villainous deeds and how complicated those reasons were. Jay doesn't see himself as the villain. Okada was the villain because he hurt Jay, but Jay finally accepted the truth that Okada wasn't at fault. But he just skipped over the part where it was actually his fault and blamed somebody else instead. So now it's just a matter of time before Jay finally accepts the truth about himself and sees how great he can be without the devious acts. But he's going to be incredibly frustrating to watch until that moment happens, if it happens. Because sometimes the lessons aren't learned and stories aren't wrapped up in neat little bows. That's the complexity and nature of people. And that's the complexity and nature of Jay White.